You typically require your official transcripts when you're applying for a PhD, and I'll keep adding these pointers. When you're applying for a PhD, you have to send in your official transcripts for any school that you've attended for a minimum of 12 months. When you're applying for an LLM, which is Masters in Law, India could be an LLB or a BLLB or a BBLLB, BSc LLB. In the case of the US, it'll be a JD. In some other jurisdictions, it might be called something else. So your basic law degree, the official transcripts, and then you move on to letters of recommendations. And we're planning to hold a separate event for letters of recommendations and how you could probably mold them, what works, what doesn't work. By molding them, I mean like who would be the right person to write a reco for you, what helps, what doesn't. Letters of recommendations can range between 2 to 4. Usually 2 is the minimum requirement that most colleges have. Now, increasingly, some colleges ask for 3 recos. Some colleges also allow you to have 2 recos and any additional recommendations, but they're not required. So that's basically on the recommendations front. So we spoke of official transcripts. They'll probably ask you to submit a CV, which I'm going to be addressing about, what is the resume. We're going to be talking about that. The pivot of your application is your statement of purpose. A statement of purpose, as opposed to a personal statement, is an account of what, why, and how, right? That's your statement of purpose. A personal statement is your journey.
But one thing that I wanted to just say before we get into any of those discussions is that please check the requirements of all of the colleges that you're applying to well in advance, months in advance, because don't be in for a surprise. A lot of times when you're submitting documents, when you're submitting essays, you could be asked to write multiple essays for a particular college.
Ways of doing that is often talking about first-hand experiences you've had either at the workplace, either if it's a subject you're passionate about, how has that passion grown? It always helps to be anecdotal at that point about talking about your own story of what you experienced. It could have been an incident, it could have been something you've noticed over time. It doesn't help to try and give statistics about why that is a problem for the world. It's more about why you connect with that problem and why you think that you're most passionate about solving this problem. And sometimes it's fine in an SOP to let them know that you don't have the answer, that the whole point of going to a school is to learn and figure it out, right? So sometimes you have a burning passion about something, you want to do something about it, but you realize this is what I don't know. This is a skill set I lack to be able to bring about the impact I want. So it's okay to own up to that, to say that I worked in this space, I saw these things happen. If you worked in the development space prior, you worked at a small NGO, maybe you did something that was trying to impact a small community. And then at the end of the job, maybe you found that you couldn't scale up or you weren't able to get the desired impact and you weren't able to figure out what went wrong or how to improve your program in general. You could talk about that and how this school has a specific course, maybe, or it offers a curriculum that addresses some of those questions very directly that you have. You could also often talk about the structure of the program in itself, that it offers. A lot of policy schools often have hands-on, consulting experience, capstone projects, things where you can work in the real world and apply your skills, and how you maybe are a person who learns better with that first-hand practical experience rather than, just having theoretical understanding. So you can talk about that being a plus. So very often why you actually are choosing that school, you often have these conversations with friends trying to tell them why you want to do this. I think putting that into that admissions letter is the most effective because the school wants to hear the same thing. Very often we make the mistake of trying to prove in an SOP why we're the highest qualified to get into that program. But that's what your resume does anyway, you're talking about. So it's very often about trying to prove why you're the right fit for that program and that class. And when admissions officers read those SOPs, that's how they gauge how enriching your contributions would be in classes, what you could bring to discussions, what perspectives you could bring that could vary. So it's very often about trying to prove your fit for that program, for that school.
are differences in what is expected of you if you're applying to a US university and if you're applying to a UK university. So Esha went to a UK university. That's why, in case you wanted to go ahead and add to any of the things that I'm adding about the LLM.
Apart from this, I think some UK universities also ask, there are multiple questions that they ask. So you have a reference letter, you have the SOP, which can be a very distinct question also. So it can be, have you faced any challenge in your life and how did you overcome it? And in usually those circumstances, they also let you send in a cover letter. So your cover letter sort of becomes the document where you are able to introduce yourself and just talk about your work and what you've done. Because if the SOP question is really specific, then you might not be able to cover a lot of things. So that's just something I wanted to add, Eeshan.
Spending time on your SOP for each university.
Yeah,
so as
absolutely.
Esha said, it's not you have a 1,500 word draft ready and change University of Michigan to University of Columbia and just send it across. Columbia University and send it across. You need to spend time, and what Aishwarya said earlier is actually very helpful. It's a good rule to have that in every SOP you'll have one thing about that faculty or that course or that placement opportunity that you'll put. That way you'll make sure that none of the SOPs are run-of-the-mill SOPs that can be sent out to everyone, which means that you will for a Columbia University, you'll mention about how SIPA is based out in New York and that has its own advantages, and for an LLM in UCL or SOAS, you'll say the same about London, and so on and so forth. So it's a good rule of thumb to have to not send with cosmetic changes, not send across a document with cosmetic changes.
But just talking about my CV and how I had eventually structured it, I started it with, talking about certain dilemmas or questions that I felt really, I felt were burning questions when it came to environmental law, and I tried to connect it to an Indian context. But apart from that, I think I dedicated a small paragraph just about college, because as Aishwarya mentioned, there's a lot in terms of your research and things that you will write in your CV. So there's no need to waste the word limit on that.
Yeah, no repetition.
Yeah, but what I did focus on was I talked about electives that I had taken through law school and what I took away from them. Then I spent a short bit just talking about my work experience, which was very limited at that point. But I didn't write about, oh, I did this case and I did that case, but I wrote generally about my experience of, say, working in the NGT and Supreme Court and what that taught me about the subject. After which I then I spent a significant amount of time talking just about the university. So I think Arpit and Eeshan have already mentioned this. I spoke about a specific faculty and what about his work has really pushed me to apply to SOAS. I wrote about what I hope to take away from the course, and also how I would sort of, what kind of things would I bring in as an LLM candidate.
That don't get deterred by it. I came from a history undergrad, and I did my MBA, but I can't say I took a number of quant courses, but I can't say that I got a straight A in all of those. I still applied to some of the quant heavy programs and got in, including SIPA, even Georgetown. I remember at that point of time asked for a quant CV. So the thing is that you should still, through your CV, through your projects, etc., you can just communicate that you've worked with numbers. As long as they feel that you're comfortable with it, you don't need to be, a A-grade mathematician to get into the program. So don't get dissuaded by that.
I also come from a pure humanities background. The last time I did a math course was 10th grade, and economics, I haven't touched any of that since. And I applied to a quant heavy course at SIPA and gotten. You didn't a quant resume does not necessarily only have to list coursework you've done. It could be in the course of any work. You take on a research project, the basic like Excel data analysis work that you work with, structuring numbers, what they gauge is an aptitude. And a lot of schools also offer you a concession that if you do not have direct quant skills, you have a kind of a boot camp. Like SIPA had this 1 week in orientation. You have an additional math program to do that just helps you reach the level that everyone else has. And that is basis your past work with math and quant skills. If you've not done any, the school offers you that bridge course and a link course in a way. You do it for a week and then you're ready to start off at the quant level that everyone else has. So the quant resume, often we tend to cut out even basic online, like secondary research based number stuff that you've done. That also does count as quant work, as long as you're able to understand how you want to use your quant skills or able to show the aptitude to pick up on quant. That also suffices. So on WorkX, I think universities vary anywhere between 2 years to 5 years is kind of the average that I've seen of people who come into grad school. There are, of course, cases of people who come in straight from undergrad too. It's not that it's never happened. There are such cases that do exist. But my word of advice would be, especially if you're looking at an MPA and in the US, which are often very work experience oriented, real life, experiences oriented, it does help to have some amount of work experience coming in, because you take away the most from the course then, because you have some context, some understanding of the space, what you learn, how you apply it, because these courses are not very academic and theoretical in that sense. It's the simple distinction. In UK programs, often you have a dissertation or a thesis to finish up your coursework. US colleges rarely give you that option. It's often your real work credits that you come up with a consulting capstone project kind of stuff. So it helps to have some experience to be able to take away the most, but that's a personal choice you can make basis what you want to take away the most from the degree. But there is no hard and fast rule, but a 2 to 5 year is the range that I've seen. There have been exceptions still beyond. You could be also making a career change if you have a much longer work experience. People do that 10, 12 years in an industry and want to switch across. Those cases also do exist.
Right.
So if you have any kind of work experience, even if it is not in the specific sector, like I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of career changers who often want to come into this space. So your entire statement of purpose could talk about the work that you've done, but your passion and your purpose, your reason for choosing to come into the governance and policy space. So what is it that drives you? What is it that you're looking to do? Maybe you've been in kind of a corporate work culture and you're wanting to pivot into finding work that has real world impact. You want to talk about being able to contribute to a specific space or sector. You can talk about your why as to why you want to get into this now and how you want to get into that space. And in general, some transferable skills that you might be able to reflect on if you've done, kind of project management, if you've done something with finance, maybe you have some quant kind of experience, how any of those you could transfer into the work that you're doing now. So you could have, you can talk about the transferable skills you have and very heavily focus on the why you want to now move into this space. And again, the same advice on the specific school to keep in mind how that school would help you. And another thing that I'd like to touch on, which kind of ties to your questions also, on what you do after the degree. Since you come in with an amount of work experience, there could be a certain kind of opportunity that you would be more, a perfect fit for as a candidate, since you come in with experience. So that also could be something you allude to in your SOP about, this is what I see doing next, and this is how the school either facilitates that process or provides me opportunities to continue in.
My quick 2 bits on that would be that you must be professional, certainly in terms of how thorough you are with the research about that particular school, about your vision as to what you want to do. But in terms of your writing style, obviously you shouldn't be unprofessional while writing it, but it's the tone that matters. It's how you structure your ideas, your thoughts, your paragraphs, that matters, and that needs to be extremely original. And also, may I say, obviously with some exaggeration, entertaining in some ways. Not entertaining really, but in a way that somebody really wants to read. It doesn't just read like a boring drab paragraph. And that's why being anecdotal about it, as I think Aishwarya had mentioned earlier, helps a lot, because the reader really connects with your personal story. So how you begin your SOP is really, really important. In fact, a lot of time should be spent on how you begin your SOP. And typically, starting with a personal story or starting with your vision is a great idea, and not starting with
I
statistics.
graduated from so and
Yeah, or
so.
your life story, or some of those cliched quotes that pen is mightier than the sword. Don't use that anywhere. I mean, that's just best to avoid anywhere. But yeah, I think that's what I can think of.
Is not a piece of writing that they're gauging you on. Please don't treat it. Often people tend to treat it as an article, as a news story you're writing. You have a lot of content to communicate. Keep in mind that it's constantly also about what you want to say, and you have a very limited space to say it. So if there are things that you can finish in a sentence, you don't need to, go into that second sentence or go into any flowery language to try and explain it. You can be crisp to the point, but keep in mind that, as they mentioned, the tone sticks. But always keep in mind that you want to communicate a certain idea, you want to talk about certain things, your own vision, your own thoughts, and you have a very limited space, so keep it succinct as far as possible.
So first about your PhD SOP, Neeti, it is completely with the master's SOP, it's more about your journey, what you want to achieve, what you have done in the past, what really drives you. PhD is more formal. It's about the gap in research that exists and what your research is filling in, or how you'll fill in that gap. So if we take, that's the basic difference. It's more formal. In the UK, you would be asked to submit a research proposal, which is anywhere between 8 to 10 pages. There you'll have to have your introduction, you'll have to have your gap analysis, you'll have to have your methodologies, you'll have to have your hypothesis, you'll have to have your references. So that's a mini PhD thesis, if you like, in itself. For the US, it's more of an SOP, a 2-page SOP, but that SOP, as I mentioned, is completely different. About transitioning from a professional space to an academic space, or PhD admissions committees preferring people with academic experience. Let me first be absolutely honest. Maybe there is a preference towards people who are coming in from academia, because you're not having to establish that you're oriented towards research. That comes with being in academia. But having said that, you should not feel that the chances are more difficult, because after PhD, only about 55 to 60% people move into academia or go into academia, which means that 70% of the folks who are coming in are professors, and only 50% are going to academia point, then jumping into academia point. Yes, professional folks usually take it as an opportunity to get into academia, but that is certainly no restriction. And I would still suggest that even if you do have an experience from the Big Four, then you will actually stand out in itself. You do not have to worry about academia. One thing that touches upon what we were mentioning earlier about work experience generally for your master's and academia versus corporate experience for your PhD. Every PhD, every master's course wants diversity. So they would not get 20 law clerks as their batch of LLM, and they will not get 20 HR consultants from their batch of CPA or whatever, which means that do not think that your profile will hamper you, or your not having any work experience for your master's will hamper you. It will be, you might be better off if you have a work experience, but that will not preclude you from getting admitted or completely decimate your chances of getting through.
my quick bit on this is that, see, when you look at the discipline of IR, and I'm talking from more of a practitioner's perspective from my think tank, I don't have a degree in IR. It typically has three subfields. Number one is international politics. Number two is international trade. Number three is management of global commons. So environment, global health, etc., etc. So now it depends. I cannot give you specific advice, but it depends on how you can leverage what you are learning at Teach for India and connect it to either of these issues. And if you think that what you're doing at Teach for India has something to do with global politics, or it has something to do with the management of global commons, how do we manage, access to education globally, things like that. And what is, in some manners, what's the diplomacy aspect of it? I think those would be, typically useful trajectories to talk about in IR SOP. But I know Ish.
I would also like to add just one thing, that if this is your second master's, an important point to address in your SOP is why you want to do a master's again. Because schools should not take it that you're just doing it for the heck of doing it. There's some specific reason why you chose to do another one. It could be a change in subject. It could be that you have, you found an expertise that you want to deep dive into right now. So make sure your SOP addresses that question specifically of, if this is going to be a second master's, why specifically are you choosing this program and this school? In terms of your question on your 2 years of fellowship being beneficial, it really depends on what you've done previously. And like I said, if this fellowship can prove your point better for why you want to do the second master's, in that case, yes. But there's no hard and fast rule that the more fellowships you do, the more years of experience, it makes your candidacy stronger. It really does come down to how you link it all together and where, it leads to the logical point of what you want to do with this and where you want to go next.
At the GPOTS Fellowship, what we also do is we help people structure their SOPs and LORs. And a lot of the times there's a lot of back and forth. And I was mentioning earlier how you must go through rounds of edits and through rounds of getting a third set of eyes or third party to look at it and that sort of a thing. So in that case, GPOTS Fellowship also offers you that opportunity. Again, Arpit and I are very, very happy to edit those. But again, we have more than 60 global leaders as your mentors in the GPOTS Fellowship. It adds a lot to your CV, and that is one shining light of most of the SOPs that go through. In fact, we have a very, very special distinction that almost all of our fellows have gone on to do an LLM or an MPP or even an MSc in environmental studies and all from the best universities across the globe, including Harvard and Columbia and a bunch of other things. Fellowship was also set up with a view to give people who are at the watershed moments in their careers or academic lives to pursue what they want to. So you do not, if you want to do an LLM or a specialization at Fletcher or wherever in IR or in public policy, you'd be able to deep dive into each of these subjects at the fellowship. And on the other hand, if you want to try out something completely new, so you're an environmental lawyer or you're a corporate lawyer and you are planning on an LLM and you're suddenly thinking that what about policy? You could also have a taste of CPA, Comparative Public Administration and International Political Economy at the fellowship, while also networking with people who take those decisions. So that's a brilliant opportunity that is there for all of you. I'd again invite all of you to get in touch with us. I'd like to also thank our panelists. Thank you for taking out the time. Esha, thank you for taking out the time. Aishwarya. And we are always available on social media, on the GPOTS website to answer any questions.
So this is the website, guys, and this is where you see all of the details about the fellowship, all of the mentors who are there, and you see a lot of really interesting folks on that. You get the details of the program over here, and you get a whole list of who is attending the fellowship. You can already see that there are people from different countries, super interesting folks working again on capstone projects in this fellowship as well. So that also holds you in good stead if you're applying for a master's program, because that's substantial writing experience and research experience that you can show. So if you're interested in this, please do apply. And I hope you found this session useful. I'm sure, all that goes into writing an effective SOP is a huge topic in itself. And I hope that we've been able to answer some of your questions effectively. But again, a big thank you to Aishwarya and Esha for taking out the time. It was in touch, and thank you so much for everybody. Thanks for the team. Aditi, Shrishti, everybody
Shreya,
who put this together, Shreya, who helped us with the logistics, and the GPOTS fellows and alums who are attending over here to extend their support. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys. Again, if you do enroll in the GPOTS fellowship, we also sit with you and help you out with SOPs and records personally as well. So you can always make use of that. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Esha. I'll be seeing you soon. Thank you, Aishwarya. Hopefully I'll be seeing you soon. And please take care and stay safe. And thank you all. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.